Good morning, everyone. Bruchim habaim to the IC Summit. My name is Yakir Englander. I am the Senior Director of Leadership at the IC. And my role at the organization, one of my roles, is to make sure that we have community leaders who do what they should do, which is to support the community. One of the challenges that we have at the Israeli-American community, that our Israeliness is so strong that sometimes it's challenging for us to understand, is it enough, or should we be also Jewish? It's a fascinating question. We visited a few months ago the top leaders of the organization. We visited Rabbi Angela Buchdal in New York. And the prayer was so good. It was after October 7. They had 100 converts who joined the community that Shabbat. And one of the wishes that our leaders wanted was, can we also do conversion program? Because sometimes we feel that we are really good in being Israelis. It's harder for us to be the Jewish in the Israeli identity. Complicated. Many reasons, many rabbis to blame. I'm joking because we have to, but I'm totally joking. And it's something that we need to grow. This year, as October 7 happened, we have been expecting, and we got, a lot of support from our leaders. We have critique. We have a lot of thank you to say. But when you look on the dialogue in Israel, a lot of the words and the people who are on TV panels, you will see generals, you will see politicians, you will not see many philosophers, you will not see many rabbis, you will not see many poets, many writers who are going to hold the community. Maybe the last philosopher who was invited to panels was Yeshayahu Leibovich, somewhere in the 70s. Something changed. It doesn't mean that our spiritual leaders, religious or cultural, in Israel and in the United States, do not do the work. They're working actually 24/7, and 4 of them are here. This is a panel at the IC Summit where we're going to think and to learn from our spiritual leaders and thinkers what have done and what should be done. And by the way, I love that we have the noise of the love that as a community we give to people who survived and came back. And I think here we can find the words how we are going to welcome back the people who hopefully will come, and what we will do with the people who maybe are not going to come back. And we need both. The Jewish tradition, it's not the first tragedy that we are dealing with. There is terms like Kiddush Hashem, someone who died on the Kiddush Hashem. What does it mean? It means that we understand that this person who died in the past as a Jew was not died for nothing, but he died for the community. This is why we have that. Hashem Yikom Damo, another example. There is beautiful critique, by the way, of where Hashem was, where God was, for the people who need the religious leaders. There is a beautiful midrash that says on the pasuk, Mi kamocha ba'elim Adonai, who is like you among the goddess, or among the gods, our God. And the rabbi said, don't say Mi kamocha ba'elim, among the gods, say ba'ilmim, that our God is muted. Why our God doesn't speak? Why our God doesn't appear? this pain we hold in the past, and we need to hold now. So this is going to be our panel. We have here 4 gifts, 4 leaders in different areas of Jewish life in America and in Israel. And we have Rabbi Leon Maurice from the Pardes Institute. And we will start with you. Then we will go to Rabbi Weinblat, Dr. Aliza Lavie, and Gidi Grinstein. Each one of you hold a piece of what Israel and American Jews need. So my first question is going to be the same question for all of you. What the spiritual, the religious leaders did well in the past year, and what we need to do better? Rabbi Maurice, you are the president of Pardes, which is an institute in Israel where American young Jews from all kinds of Judaism probably disagree about everything. They come specifically to Pardes for a year or for a few months to study what is to be Jewish for them, and you offer them different kinds of readings of Judaism. I wonder, what is your perspective about what you and the leaders you did well and what should be done better?
Great. It's wonderful to be on this panel, and anything led and held by Yakir is, we're all in good hands. And really honored to be sitting here with people whose work I've admired for a long time. So Pardes has been for 52 years this kind of incubator for American Jewish leadership of depth. I'm a product of Pardes. My wife is a product of Pardes. Go to any Jewish community, and this is what opened up the Jewish bookshelf and the notion of Talmud Torah, of Jewish study and its centrality. And I think I want to come back to that word depth, because I think that as a community overall, we've been incredibly effective on the defense in the light of October 7th, and less ready, less prepared for the offense. What is the tochen, what's the content of Jewish life that we're working to preserve and defend and uphold? And I think there's a great opportunity in this moment for Jewish depth and Jewish sophistication and Jewish content. One of the historical examples that keeps coming back to me, this incredible project in Germany in 1933 called the Schocken Verlag. This was a kind of PJ library for grown-ups, for the most assimilated German Jewish community, and it was a subscription. And every month, beginning in 1933, 1 month after the book burnings in Berlin, you received a hardcover German book about a Jewish text, a Jewish philosopher, or a period of Jewish history. And from 1933 to 1938, they published 88 volumes. This is a kind of spiritual resilience of depth. This is saying we're going to use this moment in which it's difficult to be a Jew in many ways, and it's difficult for the Jewish people, and we're going to use that as a moment to lean in more and with enthusiasm and with interest, renewed interest into the meaning of what it means to be a Jew. So I think that in many ways our response has been good, and there's a lot to admire about it. But I think both on the front of what's the meaning of Zionism and what's the history of Zionism, as well as the very notion that we're a people. I think many of these young American Jews who are joining in these encampments, on elite university campuses with Palestinians and advocates of or friends of Hamas, they don't even have the sense that we're a people, that we're a nation. There's not enough of a sense of how we've defined ourselves and our own historical experience. So we need more there in Jewish life.
Thank you so much. Rabbi, Weinblat,
Yes.
you have been a rabbi in America for decades, and also you are the head of the coalition for Zionist rabbis.
Yeah.
I wonder about the role of the leadership here, of the rabbinical leadership here, around American Jews in such a confusing time around Israel.
Thank you, Yakir, and also echo what Rabbi Morris had said about the privilege of being with these very talented individuals and to address these issues. Look, I think October 7th occurred, and it has several different dimensions to it, one of which is a political dimension and the aspect of our role to be advocates for Israel within the context of the American public arena. And that involves so many different aspects to it, whether it's a lobbying, whether it's the beautiful 300,000 demonstration that came to Washington, whether it's raising our voices, whether it's working in terms of the way in which the media misrepresents the conflict, and also in terms of college campuses, what's happening there. But there's also this other dimension, and that is the spiritual dimension. How do we respond? How do we deal with that? And I think about a few aspects to that. First of all, it occurred, the massacre occurred, of course, on the Simchat Torah. And so in synagogues across the country by that time, even though it was on Shabbat, rabbis who don't answer phones, rabbis who don't do any kind of technological use on Shabbat, nevertheless, the word got out. And we found out what was happening. And that Simchat Torah, that evening, was so different. We didn't know what to do. No one knew what to do. Do we dance? Do we not dance? On the one hand, the wonderful response after the killing after the terrorist attack at the Dolphinarium in Tel Aviv, when they erected the sign that says "Lo nafsik lirkod." I get chills every time I think about that. We will never stop dancing. And so, on the other hand, how can we dance at a time like this? In my synagogue, what we did was, the first hakafah was a silent hakafah, kind of like what we used to do in the days of the Soviet Jewry movement. And the second one was also, and then slowly but surely we added very solemn music to our hakafot, and then finally the last one, it was Am Yisrael Chai. So I think all of us are grappling with how to respond to that. Someone I know went and spoke with a therapist to ask, they were having, about a month after October 7th, difficulties knowing what to do, how to respond. And the therapist, who was not Jewish, responded to say, when you are dealing with trauma, there are basically three things you need. And that is, number one, that will help you get through it. Number one is community. Number two is song. And number three is ritual. Voila. That's my business. And so within that context, I think there's much that we have to offer. I want to try and be as specific as possible to your question, though. And that is, I think about the fact that in many respects, we're still too close to the event to know what to do, how to do it. This will be our first October 7th. I know communities and synagogues across the country, my organization, the Zionist Rabbinic Coalition, is going to be sending out materials that we have collected as to how to commemorate, how to remember this moment. So the answer to your question is that people have turned, that first Shabbat after October 7th, the synagogue was packed. And the next one, it was a little less packed. So somehow we have to hold on to what we have. I'll just say this, and then want to be able to, of course, hear from our other distinguished panelists. I had a bout with cancer about a number of years ago, 12, 13 years ago. And the year after, I gave a sermon, and I said something that was probably one of the most honest things I said in a sermon. I try and be honest most of the time. But one of the things that I said was that there are times when I miss the intensity of the prayers that I expressed when I was going through cancer. And similarly, that's our challenge. We need to preserve that, because after all, the battle still goes on. The war is still being waged. There are still people being held captive. There are still people who are being killed and who are on the front lines. And so we need to remember that. So the last thing that I'll say when you ask about what we're doing, many synagogues have taken upon themselves to post pictures of the hostages. Many of them have an empty chair. And so we are trying to keep the memory alive, because at the end of the day, that's really part of what ritual does, that's part of what Judaism does, and that's part of the power of our tradition to keep it alive.
Toda rabba. Thank you so much. Dr. Aliza Lavie, something that I really love and admire about you is that you do both. You're a scholar. You are bringing voices of women from the Jewish past into the present. But you're also an activist. You were a member of the Knesset, you work with cinema, and you deeply care about the relationship between Israel and Israelis and diaspora Jews. What do you think the leadership did well this year, and where are the places that we need to do better?
Before saying this, first of all, I would like to thank you so much for all you're doing here in this conference. It's not only this panel. I mean, the way that you bring knowledge and practice in this specific conference, it's amazing work, especially this year. So I really want to thank you. And there is Kabbalat Shabbat also, and Adlakat Nerot, and Yakir. You're amazing, and I'm privileged to sit here and to share a little bit about my work and from my knowledge. And I think that this discussion, it's totally different this year, because, you know, if we had the opportunity to speak about same subject last year in this conference, it's totally different. And when you spoke about Israeli, Judaism, especially, you know, we're familiar with our people. But, you know, this morning I got the message, we have a lot of groups of Tehillim and prayers among women, and when you ask about leaders, leave the leaders, see the communities, see the people of Israel since October the 7th. I mean, we don't need leaders because there is no leadership, unfortunately. And in time like this, see the people of Israel. And I got a request, Aliza, please, תהילים לרפואת ירדן בן יפה ואריאל בן רחל. So let's now close our eyes for one moment and pray for these amazing soldiers, Yarden ben Yafa, Variel ben Rachel. And it doesn't matter if you are not used to pray or you are not familiar with the Siddur, but you know your heart. And let's your heart speak with our brothers that need our prayers. And everybody in this room, I'm telling you, Yakir, no needs words. And you ask about my work. I grew up in an Orthodox community. I went to Bnei Akiva. I was officer. I'm still officer in the army. You know, in our times, all the officers are requested. And I wrote my dissertation, but then I understood that I'm not that familiar with my heritage as Jewish woman. And always I asked myself, how come that my granny that came from Afghanistan, 90-20, my granny didn't know how to write and how to read, but she knew all the Torah by heart. I'm telling you, I remember I went with her to the synagogue in Jerusalem, Baba Tama, in the Bukharian neighborhood in Jerusalem, and the women from the balcony there, when the men that read in the Torah had mistakes, so the women from the balcony correct him, and nobody said, shh, they knew everything by heart. So what's happened in our generation? What is all about? And especially in a year like this, we need answers. We need rituals. As you said, we came back to the community. I mean, it's a natural process. And I ask myself all the time, what our mothers did. What our mothers did, why we are not that familiar with all the ritual and heritage and what is going on. Shma beni musar avicha ve'al titosh Torah imecha. The morality of the father and the Torah of the mother. So, I mean, we have both, but we forget. Because first, who edits all the knowledge? You spoke just now about the books and what's happened. And, you know, many people in Israel told me the other day, Aliza, we can't celebrate Leila Seder. I mean, we can't go. I mean, see what's happened, our sisters and brothers in Gaza. And how can we go to Leila Seder to sit together and to open the Haggadah? It doesn't work. So I said to myself, what can I do? What can I do as me, with my knowledge, with my understanding, and I'm social activist since October 7. Everybody of us left his business and things. And me, myself, I'm going everywhere. There are a lot of circles of prayers in the Hostage Square, in synagogues, in houses, whatever, in WhatsApp groups. And I said to myself, okay, let's go to the Inquisition period and took from there words. I collect a lot of testimonies since the archive was open only 40 years in Portugal, in Spain. And from that testimonies, I took knowledge, and I have some Haggadot, broken Haggadot, but Haggadot. And in Auschwitz and in other camps in the Holocaust. So I prepare a special Haggadah with all the voices from times, periods that we didn't have the Haggadot. We didn't have the opportunity to hold the Haggadot. And, you know, people took this Haggadah, and we have one night before Leil HaSeder, we have a Seder, big Seder in the Hostages Square. And it was, I mean, the old words open the hearts and understand, and I mean, and then you think about the sentence, the Kol HaMarbe Harei Ze Meshubach, you know, in Leil HaSeder, and all of you familiar with, it's time for discussion. It's opportunity to sit together, all the family, and think together, and discuss, and share, and create a dialogue, and sit as a community, and rituals. Think about it. How clever is the Afikuman? You know, it's so clever. The kids with us till the end of the Seder. And the most important thing in the Leil HaSeder is not to clean the house, believe me. It's very important, but not, the Knei Dalach or whatever. The most important thing is to tell the story. Is to tell the story, to tell our story. So how we tell our story? We have rituals. We have a lot of customs, and via that. So as I told before, I would try to bring back our knowledge as Jewish women. Our mothers, they were so brave and well educated, and I feel that I miss it and I need it. I need it so much, and thank God I'm bringing it back. And about the the Israeli Knesset, always. I have one moment. So, I mean, I can just share an example. When Rabbi Goldschmidt, the chief rabbi from Russia, came to me, and he told me, Aliza, we have a mess and an unbelievable problem in Russia. We have many women that are agunot. I mean, rich people left their wives. Don't we want to give them get? Because it's expensive, they want all the money with themselves, and they have another wife, why not? So the same rabbinical court that gave them the mandate to be married can't give the get. So I asked him, go to the ultra-Orthodox parties, what do you want from me? And he said, no, I went, and they told me, if you want to pass this legislation, go to Aliza Lavie, we will help behind the screen. It took me 4 years, but think about that. Thank God now, Jewish women, non-Israeli citizen, can apply to the rabbinical court in Israel and asking for their help. And it's very unique legislation. It took me 4 years because it's you have to work with the international law. You're familiar with this. I don't have a time to explain. But you ask and I answer. Yes, in the Israeli parliament, it's our duty to help, serve, and hug our brothers and sisters that out of Israel.
Wow, thank you. Toda Rabba. Toda Rabba. Gidi Grinstein, you also, for me, combine two things that are so important. One is tragedy with Reut, with your work on the Oslo Accord. Your new book is about the Oslo Accord. And also your hands are helping. You are leading of TOM, Israeli-American Initiative to Humanitarian Aid. From October 7, I don't know when you slept, because you were there and come here and just bring more and more support to Israel. And you do one more thing that many of us need to tell you thank you. You shared in the past year a few podcasts with Cholmim New York that really gave to many Israeli American. I cannot tell you how many times people told me, I see the conflict from Gidi Grinstein eyes, including myself. Can you speak a little bit about the leadership that you see in your area?
So first of all, thank you very much. Before I start, I just want to acknowledge one very special person in the audience, if I may.
Of course.
This is Pascal Berkovich, 5-time Paralympian for Israel. In 3 different sports, right? In 3 different sports, just think about it. 5-time Olympian. Do you want to stand up? So people will see you? So, and second, I want to say that the scenario that Aliza just described of the women correcting the men, that happens in my home every week. I can't. So.
Support group?
No, that's okay. That's okay. Okay, so I just want to say, just to give a little bit of context, I think, and then launch into the observation that complements, because a lot of what I wanted to say, the box are being checked. So rabbis are what we call, and yesterday we spoke about a little bit about it in our roundtable. Rabbis are what we call kind of authority figures in the community. Right. So as authority figures, of course, they need, for the synagogues, they need to feed the synagogue, meaning raise money. They need to protect the synagogue. They need to assign roles. They need to resolve conflict. This is basically what they do most of their time. Here. Everywhere. Every rabbi who is an authority figure in the community. Okay? So, but the most important thing that authority figures really do is what is called to restore equilibrium. Meaning there is a moment of massive disruption, like October 7, and their role is to restore equilibrium, meaning to make people feel confident, to make people feel comfortable, to give a sense that we can go back to the ritual, we can do what we did in the past, what worked in the past will work in the future, etc., etc. This is not a statement about rabbis here. This is a statement about authority figures all over the world. Now, what I want to say is that, of course, October 7 is a moment of tremendous shock in Israel, but I believe it's also a shock for American Jewry. And it's a massive shock for American Jewry, and not just because of the protest on campus, which is also a massive event in and of itself. So I see kind of the defense of the community happening a lot. Where I don't see is people speaking about the opportunity. And there is a big opportunity that I want to say a few words about. I just want to point out, and of course it's by no way a criticism of any kind, but even here in this conference, anti-Semitism is heard everywhere. But where is the discussion of what we can do and what we can be in 5 years, in 10 years, in 15 years? I just want to point out that in 2054, American Jews will have been in America 400 years. Okay? There is a vision point out there. In 2026, America is going to be 250 years old. Every minority in America is going to speak about their contribution to America. What is going to be our story? Okay, so there are all these big things out there that point to opportunities. And this is where I think that some of our leaders need to, as we mark the 1 year, of course we passed through the shock and some of the grievance, and we're still dealing with an ongoing crisis of the hostages, etc., and the war seems unending, etc., etc. But we have to move into the opportunity. I want to point to two other cases in history that will give good reference. When Herzl speaks about the Jewish state in 1896, this is in the height of a double crisis in the Jewish world, for Eastern Jews and for Western Jews. So there is the Dreyfus trial and the anti-Semitism of the West, and of course there's the attack of the then Russian Empire on the Pale of Settlement in the East. And in between those two big crises, he comes up and he mobilizes toward a new vision. And then again, all of us know that David Ben-Gurion obviously declared the State of Israel, but he began to work on the recognition of the State of Israel in 1942 during the Second World War. So we're seeing that in the heart of the conflict, there can come a new vision and a new direction. And this is where I would like us to start thinking about as we transition from year 1, ending October 7, to year 2 of the crisis. And this is where I think we will need the best of the intellect of our community, among rabbis, among institution leaders, organizations like this, and other organizations, intellectuals. Everybody can be invited to participate, because what is unique about American Jewry right now, this is the great diaspora of our time. And as a great diaspora, it has a role to play in Jewish history. And it has played critical roles basically until 1991, let's call it the defense of Israel and freeing American Jewry, Rabbi Weinberg and your generation. That was your big formative moment. And then from the 1990s, it was kind of a middle period, kazoo, and then from 2000, startup nation, very confident. We're all over the world. We are omnipotent. We can do whatever we wish, anywhere. And now, massive shock. So we have to manage the contraction. And managing the contraction is a huge challenge. But in this management of the contraction, American Jewry has a different role to play than what it did in the last 75 years. And this is where I see a big vacuum. I don't see anybody out there actually stepping up and saying, I'm bringing forward a vision for a community of Jews in the United States of America, have been here almost 400 years, tremendous assets of institutions. We have 5,000 plus or minus institutions across the continent. We have professionals. We have lay leadership like nobody else has. We have tremendous resources, but we don't have a vision, and we don't have, in my view, hopefully I'm not offending anybody, we don't have a vision, we don't have a direction, and we're not moving in a way that will enhance our well-being and security. And that to me is the tension of rabbis, but not just rabbis, other leaders in our community, to sort of transition to the next phase of the managing of the crisis, which is to go out and point to the way forward.
Toda Rabba, thank you so much. Short one, and then I want to go to the second row.
I just want to share with you, Gidi, that I gave a lecture at Columbia University 3 days ago. And the students, after the lecture, told me, you know, it's so quiet in the campus. I mean, we are wondering what is going on. We thought, you know, first of all, half of the students came back. I mean, majority of them left the university, other alternative, etc., etc. We have to put it on the table, by the way, yeah? And they were told that be careful from their friends, Palestinian friends, be careful. We are going to have a big party October the 7th. Be careful. This silence and this quiet time, pay attention. We are going, I mean, we know. So, you know, after I'm hearing you, we can't ignore the situation. I mean, first of all, as communities, we have to take care. We have to understand the world is change. You know, that the Harvard Club in New York was close to Jewish till 1880. I went to the army 82. So, I mean, it wasn't that far. I'm old, but not that old. 1980. 1980, sorry. So, toda. So, let's realize the reality. It's change, Gidi. We have to put attention.
Of course.
So what do I want to do now? I don't want to go because we are going to do that now. Yeah, and thank you. So give me a second. What we're going to go now is, after we understood where the leadership is and what should be done, I want to really dive with each one of you to places that this is your professional. I want to start doing the surgery, and then I want to do also the healing, because I'm not going to leave anyone here without hope. Let's start with Rabbi Weinblat. 90 rabbinical students published a letter, rabbinical students published a letter against Israel, demanding United States to take action against Israel and supporting, I would not say Palestine, but the voices in Palestinians that hurt Israel, okay? My question for you is, first we need to understand them. What is this Judaism that we see here that I don't think anyone understands? We speak about rabbinical students. I would say that I don't know how many times. I will not go to this direction. I want to focus on to understand that. The second question is, Rabbi Weinblat, what as rabbis we should do in order to deal with that? Because the average Jew who have clueless.
Yeah.
Have no idea what to do. I mean,
They turn to the rabbi.
I'm living in a community with 8 adults, okay? 3 of them going to some demonstrations, pro-Palestinians, because they said, Yakir, it's led by rabbis, right? I have no idea what to say.
Yeah.
So we need you here. One, explain us what's going on, and second, what should be done in order to change that.
Wow, that certainly is a major problem, I think. Yakir is referring, I'm sure many of you know, after the previous war with Hamas, that there were 90 rabbinical students who came out with a letter, and they also said that Israel's response was disproportionate, and all kinds of other, and they accused Israel of all kinds of terrible things. So let me just say, first of all, what I did through the Zionist Rabbinic Coalition was to send, we circulated a letter that was signed by over 600 rabbis. And the first line of the letter deliberately said, we are rabbis, meaning we're not rabbinical student pishers, but to say we are rabbis. And so, but there is a problem, and it really relates a little bit to what Rabbi Morris had said, and that is that people who deny Zionism, people who deny the importance of Jewish peoplehood and of the state of Israel, are really saying that Judaism is a religion. And that goes contrary to our whole experience. You know, when Ruth converted and you know, viewed as the first convert in the Bible, first she said, your people will be my people. And then she said, your God will be my God. So the concept of peoplehood is integral and ingrained in part of who and what we are. And we have a problem. We have a problem because there are individuals who will become leaders of the American Jewish community in the upcoming decades who don't understand that perspective. And as a result, as you said, they are speaking at rallies. They are. There was just a full-page article in the Washington Post the other day, and I think we definitely have a problem. So one of the things that I had done through our organization was we sent a letter to all of the ordaining seminaries, saying just as you would not admit to rabbinical school someone who is racist, you would not admit to rabbinical school someone to be a candidate to be a future rabbi who is homophobic, who is misogynistic, and so on. So too, you should not be admitting to rabbinical school individuals who do not believe in the existence of the state of Israel, period. So we need to get that message out. Sometimes I wish we could have a copyright on the word Jewish, because there are organizations that misuse that term, such as the Jewish Voices for Peace. To which I say the Jewish Voices for Peace is about as Jewish as the Olive Garden is an Italian restaurant. So I think, now in terms of where does this come from?
Try to lead us. I understand that
Right.
it's a harsh word. I want to understand the why.
Yeah,
because I think
exactly
the
where I'm
majority
going.
of Jews in America would say like, sorry, you don't have the rights for what is Jewish.
Exactly. I want to go straight to that right now. And that is, I think it's one of the problems. I have to be critical of my own profession here, of rabbis who throughout the last couple of decades, primarily in our sermons and our teachings, what do we emphasize? Tikkun olam. What do we emphasize? That is the aspect of what it means to be a Jew. And we were very proud of that, because I have heard non-Jewish politicians praise the fact that we believe in Tikkun olam. And so what's happened is that people have come to believe that Tikkun olamism is Judaism. And as we all know, and I'm sure this is an educated group here, when Hillel made his famous statement, he began by saying, he said, Im en ani li mili. If I am not for myself, then who am I? He also, of course, said, Ukashani li ma'ani. But if I'm only for myself, then what am I? Vim lo kshaveh matai. But if not, now when? But he started by saying, first you have to be an advocate for yourself. I love what Elie Wiesel had said, that to be a Jew is to be the most universalistic person. It's out of our particularism. So we have to worry about this. And so when you ask where it comes from, I think it's very clear. It comes from this notion about the importance of Tikkun olam, almost to the exclusion of the notion of being a part of a people. And being a part of the people that has walked with God. And it's because of the fact that we are a people, and because of the fact that we do have sources that inspire us, that we can then inspire the rest of the world. But we also have to worry about ourselves. So the answer to your question about where does it come from, it comes from also college students going on college campuses and being exposed to professors who have a different perspective and who are putting down Judaism, and in terms of the intimidation that's going on college campuses. I really think that's part of what it's all about. You know, if we look at Jewish history, throughout our history, whether it was during the time of the Crusades or during the times of the Inquisition or other periods, people were trying to pull us away from being Jewish. That's what's happening as well. That people are trying to intimidate us, to try and make sure that Jews are not comfortable being Jewish. And so I think those are some of the sources. And in terms of the rabbinic aspect there, I think we have a responsibility to call them out. I think we have a responsibility to indicate that they are not speaking on behalf of Jewish tradition and our beautiful sacred heritage.
Toda Rabba. Thank you so much. Thank you. You know, when my wife told me that she wanted to convert, it was in August 23, and I asked her why now and what happened, and she said, I mean, we were together for 10 years. I never asked her to do any conversion. It was not my even wish, and she said, do you remember that we watched this movie about the Holocaust, about the train going to the camps full and then coming back empty, going full, coming back empty? And I said, yeah. So she said, I realize that if you are going to go on the train, I will need to decide what I'm going to do. And now I decided I'm going to go with you, so I'm Jewish, which is exactly what Reut says, Ami Amcha, and only then Eloai Eloai. She converted in October 25th.
Wow.
In October 24th, I asked her, Annika, are you sure it's not the best tribe to join? And she said, what do you mean? When I see the Instagram of my colleague therapy, she's a therapist, I see that they are preparing the train now.
Wow.
Of course I need to be Jewish.
Beautiful.
So thank you so much for emphasizing that.
Sure, that's a beautiful story. If I can just be a touch Israeli for a moment, Yakir, sometimes we Jews are too nice. You wouldn't have had a problem if you would have said to her, I want you to be Jewish. You're giving somebody a gift, but that's a subject for another panel.
I love that so much. Thank you so much. I want to continue this direction, and I want to go for you, Rabbi Leon, and I hope you all have the handouts. Rabbi Leon, the relationship between the divine and the Jews is not just between the divine there and the Jews, but it's between the divine here and ourselves. And when we go to our prayers, and before we'll go to prayers that really help us, sometimes the prayers hurt us because it says many words that we don't feel that it's right for us. And in the Jewish text, there is dialogue about how to be honest with the words and the relationship and the intimacy with the divine. I want you to take us to this journey. You brought one midrash, and if you can take like 3 minutes and walk us into this midrash, bevakasha.
You'll be the hook that pulls me off the stage if I lose track of time. I want to connect this.
When we study Talmud, there is no time, but we have time, so I'm going to give 3 minutes.
But I want to connect this actually to something that Gidi said. It's true that we don't have a sufficiently strong vision. And I would say something else that we're missing is we don't have an anchor. And the anchor, the ogen, the anchor is our bookshelf, is the classic sources of Jewish life, that we build community and we build resilience by creating an open Beit Midrash, an open conversation that all Jews can partake in, regardless of whether you love the text or you're angry at the text, whether you believe the text was given by God or it was written by people. This is this 3,000-year-old conversation. And, in my professional role, I'm all about opening the walls of the Beit Midrash to everyone that wants to learn. So I want to connect that idea that the traditional texts are an anchor. And an anchor is the metaphor that I want to use here because an anchor has a chain to it that allows for some degree of movement. And you get to choose which kind of boat is tied to the anchor. And this is one of my favorite rabbinic texts, one of my favorite Talmudic texts, thank you, that addresses both the question that you asked as well as this idea of anchor. The rabbis of the Gemara want to know if Moses in Sefer Devarim, in the book of Deuteronomy, referred to God as Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor V'Hanorah, the great, mighty, and awesome God. What happened to that phraseology throughout the rest of the Tanakh? And they're very close readers of the Tanakh. This is before Instagram and the internet, and this is what they did. They read the Tanakh and they memorized it, like the women in the balcony of the Afghani synagogue. They saw that phrase doesn't come back to Jewish life. Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor V'Hanorah, the great, mighty, and awesome God, doesn't come back to Jewish life until almost the end of the Tanakh, with Ezra and Nehemiah, with the Anshe Knesset Hagadolah, the members of the Great Assembly who came back from Babylonia to rebuild the temple. And so they asked themselves, what happened to that phrase? And so we'll just dive into the text. Okay, 2 minutes. So basically, I'm gonna give this over orally, and you can look at it inside afterwards. They see that there are two prophets who almost bring that phrase of Moses, that original phrase, Jeremiah and Daniel. One of them leaves out the word Hanorah, awesome, and one of them leaves out the word Hagibor, mighty. And they ask themselves, why did they leave them out? And the Gemara is getting into the head of those two prophets, and it's saying, well, look, they were responding to their social circumstances. They saw that the Babylonians were enslaving the Jewish people and destroying the temple. So one of them said, I can't say in this moment of time that God is Hanorah. How can I say that when the Jews are enslaved in Babylonia? And the other says, how can I say that God is Hagibor when the most holy place in the world, the Kodesh Kadoshim, the Beit HaMikdash, is destroyed and people are trampling over it? And the Gemara is arguing with Daniel and Jeremiah, and it wants to lift up the Anshe Knesset Hagadolah, Nehemiah, bringing back the old phrase, the old-time religion of saying that God is Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor V'Hanorah. And what is amazing about this passage is that the rabbis of the Talmud have kind of boxed themselves into a corner. They want to say, you know why the Anshe Knesset Hagadolah are called Gedolah? You know what makes them really great? Is Hechziru Atara Liyoshna. They restored God's crown to its original glory. They brought back that original language of Moses, who talked about God that way. They brought back the old-time religion. You'll forgive this in light of last night's speaker. They made God's crown great again. And yet, the corner that they box themselves into is they can't really condemn Jeremiah and Daniel for the choices that they made, because these are great prophets, and the rabbis are living generations later. And so it's one of these great unresolved discussions in the Talmud in which basically they have to celebrate bringing back that anchored, inherited language, and that's the project of the rabbis in many ways. And at the same time, they have to allow for personal deviation. They have to allow for each person to have their sense of integrity, for each person to have their truth. And when they say, well, they ask themselves, how could Daniel and Jeremiah have left out an adjective about God? And they said, because they know that God is a God of truth. And that's where we're left in this passage. So this is a great way to create and build a resilient and strong community across difference. We're going to lift up the inherited words. We're going to have a discussion. We're going to respond to them, but we might not be able to say them. And we want to have a kind of open conversation where we allow people to also speak their truth.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Gidi, your book, Flexigility, and I want to go to the hope. I want to go to what we should do. Your book, Flexigility, speak about the tension between two Jewish values that led Jews to survive and flourish. How we can take these two terms, maybe you can say a word on each one of them and use it in our time as we prepare for the next year.
So you asked me to bring also a source. So I brought the source of Nathan Alterman that I chose for my cover of my book. Unfortunately, it was never really turned into a song like many other creations of Alterman, but I want to read it in Hebrew and then obviously translate. לערבב את תחומי ההווה והזכר. Those of you who understand Hebrew, gorgeous Hebrew. לערבב את תחומי ההווה והזכר, את גבולות המופשט ונכסי המוחשי, ולמדוד לכולם באותה מידת שכל, באותה מסירות של כוחות נחושים. וליתן בבוא יום, בעד אלה או אלה, את הדם, הוא הנפש, בלי להג פתאים, כבעניין חליפים, שיפה לו האלם, אלם באלף, meaning silent, לאחר שנבחן ונמצא כדאי. Meaning to mix the domains of the present and the memory, the boundaries of the abstract and the assets of the concrete, and to measure to all of them with a sound mind, with the same dedication of committed forces, and give when the day comes, but for one or the other, the blood, which is the soul, without blagging, as a matter of exchange that is so trivial that you don't even need to speak about it, Shielo Elem, only after it was explored and found worthwhile. This to me is what we all need to do, all the time. This is what well, yes, of course. So I just want to say that these moments of crisis bring out exactly these tensions. And my book speaks about flexibility and rigidity. It's the combination between rigid elements and flexible elements. They exist in every society. But the Jewish people has a unique mix of flexibility. And the unique mix begins with the fact that we have 4 founding stories. As a people, meaning we have a shared legacy and a shared destiny, we're a family, we're a tribe. This is the story of peoplehood. As a nation that is associated with a specific place on the face of this earth, which is the land of Israel. This is a story of ownership, sovereignty, control, but also of exile. We have the story of being a light unto the nations, serving humanity, and we have the story of being a religion. Now I want to go back to what Rabbi Weinberg said, and Rabbi, I want to give you a suggestion. Stop use the word conversion, because conversion means we are a religion. Giyur means we are a people. Because ger comes from the word of living together and sharing a destiny. But conversion, convert in, convert out, this is sort of the adoption of the American narrative that sees Jews as a people. In America, the relevant other for a Jew is a Christian and a Muslim. In the UN Security Council Resolution 181, the partition decision, they speak about a Jewish state and an Arab state, not a Jewish state and a Muslim state or Christian state. Okay, so these are very important nuances to who we are. I believe that first and foremost, we are a people. And because we are a people, we have to think about it as a people, and which brings me to the dramatic aspect of this moment. This moment really takes us to the mat in terms of understanding what is the purpose of Zionism. In my view, I want to suggest my interpretation. The goal of Zionism is to serve the continued and significant existence of the Jewish people. This is the goal of Zionism. I learned it from Avram Infeld. I go with it all along. This is how I believe. What does it mean? It means that a vibrant diaspora is a Zionist imperative, not a Zionist compromise. Okay? We don't want as a people to put all our eggs in one basket, which is the state of Israel, the land of Israel. And those of you Israelis like myself, I'm not an American. I've lived here for a few years. I'm not an American. We have to have a vibrant diaspora to ensure the long-term existence of the Jewish people. It's not a compromise. But, and there, Rabbi, this is where I want to offer a different perspective to what you said. I think that from the perspective of the Jewish people, Anti-Zionism is just as Jewish as Zionism. And, you know, we had it in the ultra-Orthodox community. We had it in the Bundist community. At the beginning of Zionism, most Jews were not Zionists. In the late 19th, early 20th century. And it's okay. The question is, are they loyal to the logic of peoplehood? Because not being committed to the logic of peoplehood is actually being what we have shown in Jewish history. We saw it in the Torah, anti-Jewish Jews. We've always had anti-Jewish Jews, Jews that turn against their people. The leaders of the BDS, Jewish leaders of the BDS movement and the delegitimization movement, they are anti-Jewish Jews. But people who are critical of Israel or even anti-Zionist, meaning they don't think that Zionism is a good idea for the Jewish people, it's a legitimate view within the Jewish people. And the proof of it is that you have really a significant number of Jews that embrace this view. For me, the distinguishing line is peoplehood. Are you with the people?
I have yet to meet an anti-Zionist who believes in Jewish people.
Well, go to Williamsburg. Go to Williamsburg.
But they don't believe in peoplehood.
No, of course they believe in peoplehood. They pray for peoplehood. They speak about peoplehood. They're so committed to the logic of peoplehood. They are, in so many incredible ways they uphold peoplehood. Not exactly the way you think, but it's just their prayer. Just the way they speak, the way they relate to Jewish history. I'm not a fan of the community, but I just think we need to be clear about the definitions here. So I do want to say that, in conclusion, that these narratives, peoplehood, nationhood, being a light unto the nations, not Tikkun Olam. Tikkun Olam is a modern version of it. Avraham was blessed to be Avraham said,
Gidi,
you need to
Gidi.
be a blessing for
Gidi.
the families of the earth. Sorry, I'm closing. These are the building blocks with which we will shape a great future for our people. And also for American Jewry. Aliza, I really beg to disagree. There will be great future for American Jewry. Okay? We are in crisis. But the crisis is a pivot moment. And to me, what this crisis will mean is that a lot of talent, even people sitting here in the room, will eventually stand up and say, we will take upon ourselves the responsibility for this community, not just for Israel. And this is as important for the future of the Jewish people as doing great work in Israel.
This is the article that I want to read. This is the article I want to read after the conference. Aliza, since we ended, yeah, thank you so much. Since we started a few minutes later, I want to end with you because you give us so much hope with the prayers. First of all, I want to say, Aliza, thank you. In Adlakat Nerot, all of you are going to have, next to the Adlakat Nerot, two things. One, your Adlakat Nerot is going to be dedicated to one of the kidnapped people who are in Gaza now because of Aliza. Second, you're going to have a prayer that's written hundreds of years ago for a woman who also has a child as a hostage. So thank you, Aliza, for bringing us to our conference. I want to you brought us a beautiful prayer for a mother that her son is somewhere in the military. Why it's so important to pray all the prayers? What's the uniqueness about that, about these women prayers? In 3 minutes.
Wow.
No. This is an article.
Yeah, I don't know how to start because, I'm in a position that I'm thinking about my sisters, and me too, unless you are Jew. We can't ignore it. I teach in the university, and Judith Butler for me, and I can't read her anymore. She is Jewish. What's happened? Come on. What is going on? So, I'm not going to open it, but we can't ignore the situation first. Of course, the future will be, and we hope and we pray. And as I said before, our mothers, I'm talking about redemption and about situation that we didn't have opportunity, to hold the text in our hands, but thank God in this time we have. Although we have issues with the language, but you asked me to speak about prayers, and I would like to share with you very old prayers that was written by a woman in Moravia, in the Czech Republic. And this lady, Fanny Noida, I wasn't familiar with her work, but she 1850 understood for the first time that there is going to be rights for people, the peoplehood, the Am Israel. I mean, they can go to the university and they can do this and that, and there is no Jewish education for the people. Okay, boys, we know at least bar mitzvah in the community, ta-ta-ta-ta-ta-tam, but what about the girls? What about the women, etc.? So the first time she wrote a book, prayers book for women and girls, and in the introduction she wrote, there is no enough prayers for women. So you're asking what is, so first of all, dialogue prayers. That's why it's so popular in Israel and out of Israel. It's intimate dialogue, and always, even in the most intimate prayers, always, and you say, just mentioned, the Adlakat Nerot that we are all going to be, and all over the world, women are praying, of course, for themselves, family, community, but for Am Yisrael. Who taught us this? Who gave us this information? להתפלל למען עם ישראל. And all the women in this room, נכון שאתם מסכימות איתי? Am I right or wrong? Of course, אתה. נכון, אבל איך? Why? Why in this moment? So in Wild Oat Prayer, in the Italian version, by the way, the Italian version, all of them go to the JTS, to the Reut room, all the amazing Sidurim are there, are in Hebrew, because in the Italian community, they spoke Hebrew all the time. 14th, 15th, 16th century, educated people, I mean, also for the girls and the women. But let's come back to Funny Note. I have one more. You have the text in your, in front of you. I need it, sorry.
Aliza, רק כמה שורות.
אני לא קוראת, אני קוראת העברית. You have the translation in Hebrew, and this becomes so popular prayer in Israel for a son serving in the army that was written by Fanny, 1851. I just will read the end of the prayer. You have the translation in front of you, because I think that the end of this prayer is a prayer for all our people here and of course in Israel. אלי שבשמיים, האזינה לתפילתי, תן לברכת האם לרחף מעליו, כנס מגונן, ובתום שירותו ישוב, בריא בגופו ובנפשו, עטור אות הוקרה על מילוי חובותיו, לשמחת ליבי, לשבח ולהלל, לשמך הגדול. אמן.
Amen. Thank you so much. תודה רבה לארבעתכם. Thank you all for being here. תודה.